to infinity and beyond.
This is me. This is how I win.
Were you rushing or were you dragging? Answer!
You're a wizard, Harry.
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you.
No, I am your father.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
And here we go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back inside the film room. Zach Goins here with Johnny Sobchak for another edition of your favorite movie, TV, and pop culture podcast. Johnny, how are we doing?
We are doing pretty well, I would say. It was a fairly, I guess, in my life, like kind of uneventful week. But in the movie news, it was more than eventful. I'd say it's one of the more interesting weeks for news that we've had so far. And
Agreed.
It's going to be a fun one to kind of chat about and get different perspectives on. And I think I think as far as movie stuff at this point, like everything in my head is just all pinpointed on the Batman. Like I'm doing for anyone who isn't aware, I've touched on it in more recent episodes, but I'm doing a big rewatch of most of the live action films with my my brother and his wife. And so I showed them the Burton films because she had never seen them and he hadn't seen them in a long time, and I got them on 4K. And then we just watched Batman Begins over the week, and then we're kind of gonna, of course, finish the Dark Knight trilogy between now and when the Batman comes out. And then I'm also like planning to rewatch Matt Reeves's more recent films, and a lot of Batman news and Batman new footage and posters and things like that. So it's a lot of just excitement, like a lot of that's kind of like occupying my brain space right now. And then, but there's also a lot of other cool stuff as well that we definitely need to discuss and shine some light on. So I'm excited. It's going to be a pretty packed episode.
For sure. I feel like we've had the past couple weeks, at least, we're like, okay, we've got one trailer to talk about and one piece of news, but today I'd say the news outweighs most of the other stuff that we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
But it is, like Johnny said, a packed episode. We're talking through all of that news, catching you up on what we've been watching, as well as diving into the first 4 episodes of Peacemaker. I know I briefly touched on it last week as to my general thoughts, but I didn't want to spoil anything for Johnny, so I did not go too deep. But we are going all in on the first 4 episodes that we have now and are going to break that down in the big review of the episode. But other than that, as long as you're subscribed to the Rewind, you can keep on listening, baby. Our newsletter, get it in your inbox once a week to get everything delivered straight to you. Reviews on the website, videos on YouTube, podcast episodes, all packaged into an email. You can subscribe on our website. You can subscribe on our social media pages so that you don't miss out, because a lot of cool stuff comes in that, as well as our giveaways that we are doing. So make sure you're subscribed to the Rewind. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. Follow us on social media. Just get as much inside the film room in your life as possible so that you can keep up with everything that's going on. So Johnny, let me ask you, what is going on? What have you been up to in your low-key week beyond the Batman? Anything?
So of course I touched on Batman Begins. That's where we're at in our rewatch, which was fun to revisit. I've always been really fond of that film, and I remember even as a kid when that came out, going to see it in the theater. It was kind of a start of a pretty formative period in my life for the Dark Knight trilogy. But after that, as far as films, I've only watched one other one since the last episode, and that is Matt Reeves's Let Me In, which is his adaptation of a Swedish novel, and that was also already adapted into film in Sweden. That was in 2008, and then he did this in 2010 after he did Cloverfield, and before he did the Planet of the Apes movie. So that was cool to finally see it. I've been wanting to watch it for years, and I had seen the Swedish film a few years ago while I was still in college and but just had to get around to it, and we finally did. And I was kind of blown away by how much I actually liked it and was impressed by it. His filmmaking strengths are all there. He's still gets into all those emotional nooks and crannies that might be, suspecting from the Planet of the Apes movies. Those movies always got me pretty good, especially War for the Planet of the Apes, as far as emotional, engagement. And this one did not disappoint in that regard. And visually, Greg Fraser's cinematography and Michael Giacchino did the music for Let Me In as well. All really impressive. And you can see how far they've come, but you can also see those strengths even back, over 10 years ago now, and just how they've developed. And now they're all working together on the Batman again. So it's really cool. And then the performances all great as well as usual. Cody Smith McPhee, he's getting all sorts of awards buzz this season with critics and is pretty well poised to get an Oscar nomination. So it was cool to see him in this child role, and I thought he was very impressive. I thought he did a damn good job, and I was like, wow, this kid, I'm glad he's about to get an Oscar nomination because he deserves it for this, if nothing else. And it's very strange as well because he's my age, like he's 25. And like his birthday is like fairly close to mine, so it's pretty interesting to know that this kid was working all the way back then and has worked his way up. And I had only really seen him, I think, in maybe just Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, which is another Matt Reeves film where he plays the son of Jason Clark's main character, or at least his stepson. And so then I saw him in The Power of the Dog just in the last couple of months, and I thought he did a really damn good job in that movie, and it was pretty impressive. And then of course he's gotten all this other awards buzz, so very cool to check that out. And then Peacemaker just was able to get all those episodes knocked out, and I'm looking.
But it sounds like you were able to stay relatively busy even on a low-key week. I also was in on the Batman Begins rewatch. I have not gone as far back as the Burton movies, but like I mentioned last week, I got that 4K set of the Nolan Batman movies. So I am working at least through those ahead of Matt Reeves with the Batman. So also checked out Batman Begins last night. And honestly, it was one that I feel like I hadn't seen it in quite some time. I can't remember the last time that I watched it. Because I want to say I saw The Dark Knight first. Like, I don't think I saw Batman Begins in theaters. So like I saw The Dark Knight in theaters and then went back and watched Batman Begins. So it was kind of like a weird out of order experience first coming to those movies. So it was really cool to revisit that, and kind of, obviously I remember far more from The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises, but to see how the world all begins there, it was nice to revisit that. And it's interesting to see how the difference that we're probably going to be getting with the Matt Reeves movie, because we know that that's like a already established Batman, not a pro Batman, but what, year 2, right? In his caped crusader reign. So versus like seeing him actually like become the Batman and everything. So we're kind of going to get to jump right in versus seeing the whole process of becoming the Batman. But
Yeah, definitely.
But I did not watch The Dark Knight. I instead watched The Green Knight last week as well, which I had not seen from 2021. And unfortunately, it was just not my thing, not my jam.
Yeah.
I know that I know Jake, like, I think he gave it 5 stars. He loves that movie. I don't remember what your status was on it, but it was
I was more middle of the
out there
road
for me. Just because like it was definitely like the visuals were beautiful and I really enjoyed like looking at it, but just as far as like the actual story and stuff, it's not really. Going in initially when we were seeing trailers, I had one expectation, and then I heard afterwards that like it's not like that, so I kind of changed my expectations, and I will agree that this is not what I was expecting initially. So I know Jake had kind of warned me, like, I don't think this is going to be up your alley, but I'd gotten the 4K for Christmas. So I was like, I have to at least give it a try. And unfortunately, was not my jam.
Yeah, I was definitely middle of the road with that one. It was interesting because it was one of my more anticipated films from last year. I was a big fan of David Lowery's A Ghost Story from 2017. And I really liked Dev Patel and Joel Edgerton and Alicia Vikander. I thought that was a great cast. And yeah, and I feel like we don't really get these kind of fantasy. It's not even like a big budget fantasy film. That's the cool thing about it. It's more like a mid budget. And it's this take on this kind of Arthurian legend, and I thought that was really going to be exciting and kind of cool to see that from like an art house perspective. But yeah, no, it didn't really ever suck me in and like get me like entranced like I hoped or thought it would. So that was one of my bigger disappointments last year. I ended up giving like I think a 3 out of 5. And haven't really been eager to rewatch it. I'd be curious if I ever do, what my thoughts are if I adjust them and think of it better, or if it just kind of stays low for me. But definitely understand where you're coming from on that one.
But outside of movies, I know I've been on my TV grind this year so far, and that has continued. The embargo has lifted for the After Party, for the first 3 episodes, I'll say, which premieres on January 28th on Apple TV Plus. And I finished, so I was given 7 of the 8 episodes for this murder mystery comedy show. And it's very frustrating. Like, I know I'm like very lucky to have the 7 episodes, but like, it's a murder mystery and they didn't give us the conclusion. So I'm like over here, I binged 5, 6, and 7 yesterday. And I was just like, man, I need to finish this. But I don't know when or if I'll get a screener for that last one, or if I'll have to wait. But it's a lot of fun, great comedy cast. I know I've mentioned this like the last 3 weeks, I think, but it's very cool. I didn't really notice it, I believe, the last time I was talking about it on the podcast, because I'd only watched 1 or 2 at that point. But now looking back, each episode is like a different genre, basically, because the way that the story is unfolding is that like each episode is focused on a different person recounting the events of the night where this murder occurred. And so like each person has their own personality. And the first episode is like the main character, if you can call him that. And it's just kind of like straightforward, almost like rom-com, because it's like this guy going back to the high school reunion and trying to get his life back on track. But then it's like one episode is a musical theme, and one is animated, and one is like a cop procedural show. And it's super cool to kind of see how they lean into all those different worlds. So that show's a lot of fun. I think it'll be a good hit on, not like a hit as in like a Ted Lasso or morning show level on Apple TV Plus, but I think it'll have a good audience to pick that up. But on the other side, on Disney Plus, I'm willing to give one more chance to the Book of Boba Fett to win me over, because another dreary episode this week was saved by the last 5 seconds, in which we hear da na 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 na, and it is heavily implied that Mando is going to be making an appearance next week. So I'm interested. Like, obviously we've seen Mando and Boba together, we've seen them working on missions, so I'm interested to see if that kind of piques my interest a little bit more in this show, because it's just been kind of like blah. Like, it's been fine, it's not bad, but it's just like very underwhelming, considering how high the bar was set with Mando and just what people had come to expect from this show. And so for me, at least, I've been kind of just turning it on and just not being blown away, which is a disappointment for someone who loves Star Wars like me and who was excited about the potential of this show. So I saw a tweet that summed it up pretty well, that said that if you reduced the dialogue of Boba Fett by 50%, this show would be 100 times better, because he just like the whole thing with the character was like the mystique and the aura and the like bad, like the general like badassery of him. And now he's like has so much dialogue, and I've seen articles that like Tamara Morrison was questioning like the total amount of dialogue of the character, like when they first started it, and just like if the actor who brings this character to life has those same questions, like maybe we should take it into consideration. But I don't know, I want to see more kicking ass and less talking and flashbacks. So we'll see if Mando can come save the day. But if that's I'll at this point I'll see it through to conclusion. I'll watch the rest of the season, but my hope, if next week is not like a great episode, I'm going to be overall disappointed with this show. So,
But will you keep watching?
Yes, I feel like at this point I've watched. I don't know how long the show is even going to be. Let me look that up. But I've already watched 4 or 5 chapters, I think. So it's like at this point, like I might as well. Episode 6, or let's see, episode 5 is this week. So I've watched 4, and I think it's only 6 episodes. So there's no point in giving up after next week. Sorry, it's going to be 7 episodes. So yeah, I'll see it through.
Respect, because I have not watched a moment of it, and I'm not really surprised by the kind of muted reception. It seems like even from someone as big a fan as you. So I'm good on this one. Maybe Obi-Wan will come around later this year and get me back in the game, but I'm chilling on the Star Wars front for now.
Well, let's get into the news for the week, because there is some Star Wars news, there is some other Disney Plus news, and a lot of Batman news, and a lot of other news. So let's get into it. We'll kick it off with some trailers for the week. First up, we talked about it last week. The Moon Knight trailer debuted on Monday Night Football, gave us our first look at Oscar Isaac's new, I guess our first real official look at Oscar Isaac's upcoming Disney Plus show. What were your thoughts here, Johnny? Did it wow you? Did it pique your interest whatsoever as to what this character, Oscar Isaac, Ethan Hawke, what they're going to be bringing to the Marvel Cinematic Universe?
I don't think I would say that necessarily. I thought the trailer was fine. It didn't impress me, didn't blow me away, unfortunately. I thought that it was pretty much on par and showed pretty similar stuff to what we got in that Disney Plus Day footage a few months ago or a couple months ago. It just felt much more like a teaser style, and it wasn't showing off too much, which is fine. I understand that. Maybe we'll get another trailer, I'm sure, closer to the release of this, which is a couple of months away. But yeah, it just, I'm interested in seeing Ethan Hawke in this role as the villain. But as far as the action and the mythology of the character, I feel like we didn't get enough of that, a sense of that in this trailer. I think it was just so much of showing, hey, here's Oscar Isaac doing this, and here's Oscar Isaac talking like this, and here's Oscar Isaac looking really scared and worried. And for me, that's just like not enough, really. Like it just wasn't. It wasn't like locking me in and like grabbing my interest, by the neck. It just seems like, okay, another Disney Plus show. Hawkeye just wrapped up. It's coming down the pipeline. You don't have to wait that long. And that's cool. I'm glad people are excited about it. I'm still stoked about Oscar Isaac coming into the MCU. I think Moon Knight, from everything I've heard, sounds like a really interesting and exciting new character. And I think that there's a lot of potential, but I'm not like, nothing about my thoughts on the show and the potential of that character has really been affected by this trailer, which is kind of a bummer, because I think a lot of people were looking forward to this, and it seems like it's done some pretty big numbers, but I don't know. I'm almost kind of surprised by how much everyone loved this trailer and was like, oh my God, like this looks amazing. This looks like it's going to be like the best like Disney Plus show and all this other stuff. I'm like, wow, really? It's like not even close to like what I felt like watching this. But hey, I definitely don't want to rain on anyone's parade. I'm glad, I think it'll be, hopefully, fingers crossed, the show will be what really sells me and impresses me. And that's really what counts. So
yeah, I mean, I hadn't watched this again since that first initial viewing on Monday night, but it did enough to like pique my interest. I'm not like Googling and diving into the wiki pages to figure out all the mythology or anything. I'm just going to let it happen.
Wow, so you're not a real fan.
No, not at all. But I mean, Oscar Isaac and Ethan Hawke are enough to get me to watch a show. I mean, I was going to watch it anyway, but I'm interested to see how this unfolds, because this is the first time that we're getting a show. This is the first time that they're doing a show about a character who hasn't previously been introduced. So that'll be interesting to just see how an origin story unfolds over 6 to 10 episodes, however many it ends up being, rather than, okay, we know Wanda, we know Vision, okay, we know Loki, but instead, like, maybe like, is this going to be the way that Marvel tries to do things now? I know we're getting like Ironheart, we're getting She-Hulk, we're getting a lot of like new Miss Marvel, a lot of new characters introduced in series. So rather than like an origin story movie, are they going to just ease us into all these characters on Disney Plus before putting them on the big screen? So I think that has potential to be like, I mean, I feel like a lot of the origin story movies, at least the early ones when they were still kind of like figuring it out, have some trouble. And so to have 6 episodes, 10 episodes, whatever it is, to flesh out the character, I think that could be something that's better suited for the series versus like what we've seen with the series so far, you know, where it's kind of like telling a story instead of like using that time to expand on the character. So I will say that's one of the more interesting parts beyond like my excitement for Moon Knight, but just general excitement to see how they have an origin story unfold in this format.
Yeah, I mean, that's an excellent point that I haven't really seen anyone else make. I haven't considered myself as that element of the fact that this is an origin story for the first time in the MCU on Disney Plus. Of course, we got Shang-Chi's origin story. It was the most recent one last year as far as a solo character, and then we also got the Eternals in their film. But that is intriguing, and that's kind of a start of that era, because last year was really, as you pointed out, all familiar characters, pre-established characters, relationships, character Moon Knight and his show. Then there's going to be She-Hulk and her show, and then Ms. Marvel and her show, and a number of other things. So that'll be interesting. And that, I think, again, that's where it is a level of interest for me that gets me a bit more excited, or a bit more curious, at least, to see how they work with that and what the pros and cons maybe are of that. So yeah, I think March, between this and the Batman, I think comic book fans are going to be pretty well satisfied, I would say, in March. But between now and then, it's going to be a little bit more of a downtime.
Agreed. Well, another thing that we're getting later this year, we got a first teaser for it. Not between now and March, but it is coming September 2nd, 2022 to Amazon Prime Video, and that is The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. We got the title announcement. You know, we didn't know, we just knew that it was a Lord of the Rings series. We didn't know that it was going to be subtitled The Rings of Power. Very cool title introduction here. That this looks, it's basically like the ring, the metal being cast, and it spells out the Lord of the Rings and the Rings of Power, and it looks like super cool and very digital and CGI, but it actually was real footage filmed of metal and ironwork and everything. And so that I as someone who's not like as big on Lord of the Rings, I was more into the behind the scenes of the making of the title sequence rather than what it gave. So I will defer to you as a Lord of the Rings fan to talk to share if this is like, I mean, obviously it's something that people are excited about. I'm still excited about it just because it is like this epic giant $1 billion budget, $1 million. I don't even know. It's like a ton of money that they're pouring into this show. So I'm excited for the potential alone there. But as a Lord of the Rings fan, how does this interest you?
You know, I think Amazon has done a fairly good job with television shows. I think that no one would really doubt them there necessarily. Like, they have some impressive things in their catalog. I think The Boys is probably their most popular show, or at least with like Twitter folks, and it's like a comic book show. So there's that fan base kind of built in. And then they have other things that I know, like Marvelous Miss Maisel is like a big comedy that's done well, and some other things that I can't think of off the top of my head. But I think this is, of course, going to be their marquee show title, I think, moving forward. And September, I mean, it's not early in the year by any means, but it's not at the full tail end of it. So it's kind of nice we don't have to wait a whole 10, 12 months to get to it. And I'm curious as to when we're going to get like a full blown trailer with actual footage and get a feel for the tone and the style of the show. But for this, it's pretty cool, pretty neat. I think that, yeah, of course, the highlight is the fact that they somehow did do this practically, and there's the artistry involved with that, I think, is very impressive and neat. So I know that the title, I don't really care about the title. Like it's The Rings of Power makes sense. You kind of get an idea of what the era is going to be like for the show and what the um, story might be following, etc. So that works. Sounds cool. And yeah, I dig it. But it's not like too much to really go on at this point.
Agreed. I'm again not the resident Lord of the Rings fan here. I will watch this. I am excited for it, and hopefully this can be maybe my big interest in the franchise, since the rest, I love the Hobbit book, but the movies were good to fine with me. It wasn't like I was like obsessed with them. So if you didn't know that about me and you were listening, please don't tune out. We still have a great episode unfolding. But the last trailer we are going to talk about, which doesn't have to be a long discussion because it looks god awful, but that is you remember back in pandemic season 1 when we had the Tiger King takeover and the show released on Netflix and it was everywhere, and then immediately afterwards they were like, oh my goodness, we have to make 1 billion properties about this. And so there were at least 2 different scripted series in development, and one of them was starring Kate McKinnon as Carol Baskin. And now this show is about to come out on Peacock. It's a scripted series, and we got the first trailer for it. It's called Joe vs. Carol, and it looks like it's like an SNL skit. Like it's I don't want to talk about it more than this, but please, if you're curious, go watch this trailer and just like, then you'll understand why I'm at a loss for words here. Johnny, I know you were really looking forward to this property and that you have been watching the trailer quite a bit. Is that correct?
I will not watch this trailer, sir. I have not. I literally never even touched a single second of that original Tiger King show on Netflix that took everyone by an insane storm at the beginning of the pandemic. So I have zero real knowledge or context or interest in any sort of follow-up or spin-off or sequel or whatever you want to call it. So yeah.
Well, let's move on to some Batman news. Johnny, take it away.
Oh yes, this is the big one. Well, the key news,
quite literally the big one.
I don't want to say that this like broke the internet. That might be a bit of an exaggeration, but the big news that a lot of people were buzzing about and was kind of taking over, at least on Twitter, was the news that the runtime, there'd been some speculation, there'd been some rumors, there'd been some unconfirmed reports, but it is official from the Hollywood Reporter. They ran a story on it. 2 hours, 55 minutes long. As far as comic book movies in general, the only movies that trails is Avengers Endgame from the MCU, of course, which is over 3 hours. And then the 4-hour Zack Snyder's Justice League, which was on HBO Max and never released in theaters. So this is the longest DC Comics film that will ever, to this point, been released in theaters. It's about 23 minutes longer than even The Dark Knight. It's I think a lot of people, they were hoping that it would be this long. I think people were kind of excited by that prospect of kind of knocking down all those records or markings to date for the runtime and the length. And I think people are just so excited about this movie and what Matt Reeves has said so far and what he's been able to show off, that I think the idea that we could watch this and watch it for 2 out of 3, close to 3 hours is exciting rather than anything else. I think it's just more opportunity for interesting storytelling perspectives and fleshing things out and starting off on the right foot with this new potential trilogy. And Pattinson just looks so cool, and all the other supporting characters that are in this cast, I think, look and sound great, and that's what people are kind of thinking and agreeing on. So no real negatives, I would say, on this. I mean, there have been some people that are like, oh, movies are too long now, or oh, we've seen how many Batman movies, why do we need a 3-hour one? But I would say that's kind of the minority opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like for us, like obviously being excited about the movie, this just gets us more excited about it because we know that it's going to be long and it's going to be glorious. But like, I feel like you can't really pass judgment, at least negative judgment. Like if you're excited about it, then yes, a long runtime is already going to get you even more excited. But like,
right.
a runtime can't really have negative judgment until after you see it. Like then you
Yeah.
can make your decision as to whether, okay, this part was too long, we should have cut that out, and this should have
Yeah.
been 2.5 hours. So, I feel like if there's negative judgment being passed on just the announcement of this runtime, that it's just to rain on someone's parade.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I am one who always says, I tweeted about this a little while back because this was like a weird thing people got all up about, the runtime of movies. I feel like the pandemic has really just liquefied our brains in a lot of ways, where the discussion, especially discourse on what you would call quote unquote film Twitter, evolves and revolves around time and again these very just absurd points of conflict, including runtimes and movie lengths. People recently were complaining movies are too long, and I don't even remember which movie was causing that. Maybe it was Spider-Man No Way Home, maybe it was Dune, maybe it was something else. But who gives a damn how long a movie is? Like, it reminds me of that David Lynch famous clip where he's filming Twin Peaks: The Return, and someone whose not job it was not, seriously, and that's kind of my thing with movie runtimes is who cares, at least until you see it. Exactly, it's to your point. You might feel that it's too long, you might feel that it's too slowly paced, but you can't say that until the movie's out and you've actually seen it. And I respect that. If that's your opinion after the fact, so be it. But I think anyone whose opinion is movies are too long, or there should never be a movie that's this long, 3 hours, or it should be not more than 2.5 hours. A Batman movie shouldn't be more than 2 hours or something like that. I think that's just absurd. I think some of the best movies of all time are very long, 3 hours or longer. It's just, I made a joke. I did a joke tweet trolling the other day that, this movie has the same length as The Godfather. And that's cool in my opinion. I think that really, if you're trying for, especially Batman, who has had so many famous movies and successful movies made at this point, if you're trying to do something new, if you're trying to come at it at a different angle, a 3 hour kind of like epic crime movie, I think that's something that is a little bit different, even from The Dark Knight, which I think what people say is like a crime epic in some ways. But that movie itself, that movie's 2.5 hours long or so. It's 3 hours and 2.5 hours. That's a pretty big difference. I think there's a lot of movies these days that are about 2.5 hours, but there's not many, especially of this budget and of this high profile, that are close to 3 hours. So I could not care less. I am, of course, buzzing about it because I'm so excited. I would, if Dune had been 3 hours, I would have been over the moon. But I still think that runtime, it's all depending on the project. It's all depending on the director, the writer, the editor. And so I don't want to say like, oh, this is such an obvious choice for the Batman to be 3 hours, but I can't say that, oh, it's a bad choice or it's going to be a negative. I think, if anything, I'm just excited that we're going to have so much time with these characters and getting set up in this new version of Gotham City.
Well, speaking of the new version of Gotham City, I know we've seen it in trailers, but we got some official clips, some footage here. We've seen like different TV promos and a few different sequences, but an actual scene, it seems, was released on YouTube, and it is the funeral scene in which the car crash. We've seen it teased in the trailers, but we saw now a Riddler reveal. We saw the car come crashing into the funeral. We saw Bruce Wayne save a child, and the explosion that follows. At this point, I'm sure you're lapping that up, but also, are you avoiding anything like that because you just want to see it on the big screen? I know we had Reeves posting about IMAX and Dolby all this week. Do you want to just wait and see it there versus on your phone or on your computer?
I've never been a person that is like, oh, I'm not going to watch a trailer. The thing with me is when it comes to trailers, at least for smaller movies, like more like art house or like indie films, the thing with those is they typically only get like one trailer. And if it's a smaller film like that, it's typically from a director who I'm a big fan of, and already know that I don't need to see anything from them. I want to go and support their movie in theaters anyway. And especially if it's an original premise, which, a blockbusters, big budget movies, high profile movies rarely come from a totally original premise. Then I want to go in kind of blind and not knowing the full, premise and what the story is going to be like. With these movies, for me personally, it's Batman. I've seen a ton of Batman movies. I'm not saying that this is, that there's not going to be something original here. Of course, I think there's going to be. I'm not saying that I would like to go in knowing the entire plot, because I definitely don't. I could if I really wanted to, I think, at this point, and figure it out. But I'm fine seeing whatever they want to release, whether that's trailers, TV spots, clips. That's not going to spoil it for me. Dune, I watched every clip, every single second of footage they released, behind the scenes, TV spots, etc., trailers, all 3 trailers. For me, that's not an issue. And so I was ecstatic when I saw that this clip came out yesterday. It was released. It was similar to the first time that we got a clip for Dune, where it was coming in the form of a YouTube advertisement. So sometimes they will put up in these YouTube ads, 2.5 minutes from a movie that is coming out, or even shorter. In Dune, it was the scene where Duncan and Paul are in the hangar, and he's telling him about his vision. And I just remember buzzing about that in the fall, and like, oh my God, like this looks so good. It's such a simple little clip, but it just shows and tells so much of what the atmosphere and what the movie's going to be like. And I feel like that was my same experience with this. And this was about 2.5 minutes. And I didn't really tweet about it necessarily. I was looking at a lot of tweets, and I was talking to my girlfriend about it, and she was like blown away by it. Like, she's just very excited about this movie as well. What did you think about the clip before I kind of get into it?
I wasn't expecting to see it. Obviously, like I was kind of it looked, because it didn't come from like the Batman, didn't like post it on Twitter. Like you said, it was in a YouTube ad. So what we saw was like someone on Twitter recorded the ad and then posted it. So that's how I came across it. But yeah, I mean, it set the tone. It showed, it's not like we saw Batman fighting anybody or anything like that. This is like still like a very tense, and there was action in the sequence, but it was more so, like you said, like showing the mood, the tone of Gotham City, how this Bruce Wayne is going to act, seeing the panic and the terror and kind of like that crime vibe that they're going for, rather than, a big comic book superhero movie. So I enjoyed seeing it. At this point, I am very much like, if you put it in front of me, I'm gonna watch it, but I'm also like, please don't. Like, I want to just like wait another month and see this on the big screen and be ready to go. So that was my take.
That's fair. I mean, and also I think I've been kind of spurred by the fact that this week we got the news that it is 3 hours long. So when you put it in that perspective, I mean, this clip, for example, is close to like 1/90th of what the movie is going to be, as far as like the amount of footage and the time spent watching it. So I think that's promising. But this clip, yeah, didn't expect to see it. And the good thing about it as well, and why I didn't have any issues kind of watching it, was that it wasn't from a scene that we had seen nothing from. It wasn't from a scene that I was like, oh, well, what is this? I have no idea what this is going to be or what this is going to lead into. This is not something that I've seen from the trailers. This is a scene that has been kind of prevalent in every single one of the trailers that has shown some footage from this scene, dating back all the way to that DC Fandom 2020 trailer where they did the footage where they'd only shot 25% of the movie. So we knew that there was going to be that car crash. We knew that Gil Coulson was going to get out and have the bomb strapped up and have the message for the Batman. But just getting to see it play out for 2 minutes of the movie without interruptions, without quick cut editing or anything, and music pounding, I just loved it. Like, I loved getting a feel for the atmosphere. And for 2 minutes of this movie where Bruce Wayne, he has all these people around him and he's all these people talking to him and looking at him, and he doesn't say a word the entire time. And it's so funny because I watched it a couple of times because I feel like Robert Pattinson does such an amazing job in just this tiny little snippet of just every time someone says something to him, every time someone looks at him and there's like some sort of interaction, you can just see everything on his facial expression. What is he thinking? What is he feeling right now? He's feeling sad and he's feeling sympathetic to this like boy whose like father got killed, and he's feeling concerned because he hears like this commotion outside, and he's feeling like curious about what Gordon is saying and what they're learning about like Gil Coulson. But all throughout this, like this whole crazy sequence that plays out, like he never seems like afraid or like he's totally of course he's kind of at the mercy of the Riddler because he's going through this situation where the Riddler's attacking this funeral. But he, even when that phone goes off, there's like that kind of ringtone noise that happens. Everyone goes like, oh my god, and like everyone like kind of backs away because they think, you know, like the bomb is about to go off or something. But Bruce doesn't even like flinch. He's just kind of like staring and like, oh my, like realizing, oh my god, like this is another message for Batman. And of course that's me. But I just loved how they kind of, the editing of this, the music, you get a little bit of Michael Giacchino's score in this, and just all the performances, the way it's shot. It's just everything I want it to be. So it's looking very good for this movie. I just couldn't really be asking for more at this point. So, and again, the last thing I'll say is that I loved, and this is another thing people were really touching on with Twitter, is that there's this commotion, and for anyone that's kept up with the trailers and whatnot, you probably know that the car is going to come crashing through. But you know, once you're in the theater, and a lot of people who have not seen maybe even a single trailer or a lot of footage for the movie, even as someone who has, I just loved that you get the commotion and you get the sound building up from outside this cathedral, and you never get a glimpse of the car until it's literally crashing through the door. The moment where Bruce saves this kid and he's like keeping an eye on him, and he then dives and tackles him to try and get him out of the way. It's like quintessential Batman. I loved it. Very heroic, very cool. He looks badass. He looks great as Bruce. I like this kind of, it's really growing on me, this kind of like reclusive, long haired, you know, Kurt Cobain inspired Bruce Wayne, I think is pretty neat. So that, in addition to these other bits of like TV spots that we've gotten over the last couple of days, really cool new shots of the cowl of Batman in different lighting with different like effects going on. He says, you know who I am. We also got a quick new glimpse of him with John Turturro's character, Carmine Falcone, who you will probably remember, Zach, from Batman Begins. He was the kind of crime lord in that movie that there was a lot of focus on. And so cool to see John Turturro. I'm excited to see how much he's actually in this. I'm not expecting it to be a lot, but I think there'll be some pivotal moments with him. And then I think the big piece of news that kind of came out of some of these other TV spots was that supposedly the tickets will be on sale February 10th, Thursday, 3 weeks prior to the Thursday where we're going to get the preview showings, where I will be locked in my most likely an IMAX showing with hundreds of other people to watch this movie. I'm so stoked. Can't wait. So we're closing in. I think it's like 40 days or something until this movie comes out. And who knows what we're going to get between now and then. We just got a couple new posters as well, which looks very cool, very badass. There's one with Batman's face, and then you see in his eye a very close reflection of the Riddler's question mark symbol, as well as another poster that really focused on just Batman and Catwoman. So not a photoshopped to shit. It's not a million characters on one poster, just floating heads. I really liked the aesthetic and like the visual style of these as well, and I can't wait to see them. I'm sure they'll be up in the movie theater here, before too long. But yeah, we're really hitting the home stretch here, and I could not be more excited. And I'm loving everything that we're getting. So
I am right there with you. February 10th. Let's get it started. I am ready to get my tickets and head to the theater. But this is not the only thing that Robert Pattinson will be starring in, Johnny.
Oh, man.
The Batman is in the works. It's coming soon. We're going to be getting another 2 movies from that trilogy. But in between all that, Robert Pattinson is now in talks to star in director Bong Joon Ho's next film, an untitled science fiction picture at Warner Brothers. So I know you had the message that I ended up tweeting out on Inside the Film Room, but Bong Joon Ho, Robert Pattinson, sci-fi, Warner Brothers, like check all the boxes. I'm in. It's inspired by the upcoming book, which comes out February 15th, called Mickey 7, which follows a disposable employee on a human expedition sent to colonize the ice world Niflheim. That sounds silly, but I assume I'm pronouncing that correctly. But it sounds like I said, you're checking all the boxes that I need. I didn't know this book was a thing. I didn't know it was coming out, but February 15th, with this new knowledge, I will be purchasing that book and reading it. Hopefully I've been stuck reading. It's very good, but I've been reading Project Hail Mary for like 4 months.
Oh my God.
It's like a long sci-fi book, but also like in my free time, it's like I'm watching all these movies, I'm watching all these shows, I'm doing other things, like to balance all of the content that I am trying to consume. It's a struggle. So hopefully I'll be finished up and ready to read Mickey 7.
Yeah. How
But
is Project Hail Mary, by the way?
it's very good. I'm enjoying it. I loved the movie The Martian. I never read the book. But I know that with the Goss God taking this one on, I've been trying to, because I remember when I started reading this, I didn't know that, and then you told me about that. So I've been trying to kind of like envision it as I go, and I'm curious to see. It's very much like The Martian in the sense that it's like this guy doing these experiments trying to accomplish his goal. I know that that's very vague, but it's not like there's necessarily like a ton of action. So I'm curious to see how that carries over to the big screen, but obviously it carried over really well with The Martian. So
Right.
I'm excited for it, and I'm excited to keep reading this book because I'm really enjoying it, even though it is taking me a very long time. But Mickey 7, what are the thoughts here, Johnny?
I mean, I was just buzzing about this when the news dropped kind of out of nowhere, and it dropped the same day as the Batman posters. So, and I think maybe it even dropped the same day as the runtime news. But it was just a whirlwind, and I am a huge Robert Pattinson fan, of course. Whether it's Good Time and The Lighthouse and his work in those movies and Lost City of Z, and of course the Batman. I think he's just one of, if not the most interesting actor, working right now. And the fact that he is going to be working with Bong, and not just working with Bong, but in any capacity, but he's going to be starring in his next film, his follow-up to Parasite, where he swept the Oscars. I mean, and it's not only is it just a new film from Bong, but it's a sci-fi, potentially like a sci-fi epic from Warner, with Warner Brothers. It's going to be an English language film, of course, and it's going to be set up with Warner Brothers, an American, Hollywood studio. There's just a lot to kind of unpack there, and I think that's really exciting. And I have no doubt that even regardless, and I'm a little bit torn on if I want to read the book. I think I probably will, just because, and the point I'm going to make here is that I feel like when Bong, even when he's adapting something, he changes and really changes some significant things and really injects his own personality and style into the story and into the world.
And there was a big emphasis here on it being inspired by Mickey 7, not that it was like a film adaptation of that.
Yes.
So it'll be cool to see kind of like the differences in where he chooses to divert from just, straight up adapting.
Exactly. So I'm all about that. I'm hoping for some awesome sci-fi aesthetics and visuals from this movie and what Bong can do visually as a filmmaker. And Robert Pattinson playing against himself, most likely, it seems like. Similar to one of my favorite, and I think underrated, overlooked sci-fi movies is Moon by Duncan Jones. And Sam Rockwell stars in that. And it's honestly, I don't want to say Mickey 7 sounds derivative of that, because, it wouldn't be the first time something like this came up, but it is very similar in that Moon, Sam Rockwell plays like a disposable space employee, and he lives on the moon, and he runs into this existential crisis where he is cloned and he runs into, he meets one of his clones, and there is that element to it. So that was just a riveting. The thing about that's so riveting, and why I like that movie is so much, is because it is Sam Rockwell, who is an incredibly talented actor, playing two different roles and giving two fantastic performances against himself. So I'm very excited if Robert Pattinson is going to be doing something like that. And there's going to be, I'm sure, there's been some Martian comparisons in the trades when reporting on this. So I would imagine there's going to be some humor in this, some dark humor. And that very much fits Bong's MO, whether it's Parasite or Okja or any of his other works. There's usually some, even Memories of Murder. I mean, there's some funny ass moments in that movie, even though it's a horribly dark serial killer saga. I think that, there's a ton of potential. And I think this is a great time to do it, because I think Bong and Parasite became so big after the Oscars, and he gained so much notoriety, and his profile developed even further. So I think this is, if you want to do a bigger movie, with Bong, with a bigger budget and you set it up at Warner Brothers, and you set it up with the Batman in the lead role, who's going to have a bunch of, a stronger, if that's even possible, Robert Pattinson's going to be a bigger star in a couple of years than he is even now. And so I think that it's just a great recipe for success, I think. And all the right things that I want to see out of a movie sound like they're going to be here. So I'm really excited, but he'll film this before he does the Batman, 2, or maybe that'll be even farther down the line, but very, very exciting for sure.
Agreed. Well, moving into some casting news, some more casting news, I should say. This one is back on the Disney Plus front, and it's not Book of Boba Fett, it's not Obi-Wan Kenobi, but it is Ahsoka. Mary Elizabeth Winstead is joining the cast in a secret role. So we've got Rosario Dawson playing the title character of Ahsoka. We saw her in Mandalorian. We know that Hayden Christensen is expected to be in this as Anakin Skywalker / Darth Vader, who we'll see how he comes about. They had a relationship. Ahsoka was his apprentice, so he's obviously been a big influence on her. It'll be good to see him back after we see him already in Obi-Wan Kenobi coming back. But Mary Elizabeth Winstead, we've seen her in quite a few things. I feel like most notably for me was as, at least in in a similar role to what we might be getting here from her. It was in Birds of Prey. Also loved her in 10 Cloverfield Lane, but we don't know much about this, so there's not much to speculate or to talk about, but this excites me. I feel like this is going to be a show that's going to be of the 9,000 Star Wars Disney shows that are coming. This is one that I am right up there with Obi-Wan Kenobi, most excited about. So this is encouraging to me. I don't know if you have any thoughts on it as a not as diehard Star Wars fan by any means, but
Star Wars skeptic.
Star Wars skeptic. That's what we'll go with.
Yeah, so I like her a lot. I've been a fan of her ever since. I think the first time I saw her or anything might be Scott Pilgrim, probably. And then, of course, she was in Birds of Prey, and she's been in a number. I mean, those are her kind of high-profile comic book movie related projects. But as a character, a lot of people are big fans of, and I liked her a lot in Mandalorian season 2. And we, of course, know Anakin is going to be in this as well. So the ingredients again are there for a big success, and hopefully the writing and directing and the vision are on par with what the talent is looking like right now. So just another reason to look forward to it, but I can't say I'm buzzing and really excited about it.
Right. Well, moving on, Knives Out 2 expected to release in theaters and on Netflix in late 2022. So we knew this was shooting. We had seen set photos. We didn't have a timeline yet, but now it is supposed to be in the fall to winter, I guess. They've said that there is likely going to be a festival run prior to its wide release. So if that's the case, then I would expect, early fall for the festivals, and then come maybe November-ish. I mean, we got the first one right around Thanksgiving, so it'd be smart to do the second one at the same time, based on the success that first one had, and people just associating it as a Thanksgiving movie. But I know I love Knives Out far more than you and your loathsome enemy, Ryan Johnson. But I'm very excited for this. Daniel Craig, Catherine Hahn, Ethan Hawke, Edward Norton, Dave Bautista, Kate Hudson, Janelle Monáe, Leslie Odom Jr., Jessica Henwick, and Madeline Klein, all playing parts in this new mystery. Johnny, do you see, as the Oscar expert on the podcast, a festival? I know we don't really know much about this whatsoever, but a festival run, is that something that is valid, you think?
I mean, there's plenty of movies that go to festivals that don't really
F9 at Cannes, baby,
turn into anything. Yeah, so this sounds like something that would be like a TIFF sort of premiere. I would say maybe it'll show up at New York Film Festival as well, but this definitely sounds like you're more success really, or anything. The original got best screenplay nomination at the Oscars, which is kind of a wild one-off nomination that it got. And if anything, I would expect that to maybe happen this time around as well. He'll get more recognition with the writing, but as someone who wasn't, again, a huge fan of the original, I'm not going to really bet the house on that or anything. If he does, cool, I guess. But I would just hope that the movie itself is good and not necessarily going to be aiming for awards, just to be entertaining and fun and clever. So I'll keep my fingers crossed in that regard. I hope to see it in theaters. I hope it gets a decently wide release. This is going to be a interesting experiment, kind of more of a mixed hybrid release schedule for Netflix, which is not something that they've really done before. I mean, they've had movies in theaters before, but this sounds like it's going to be maybe their biggest attempt yet. So whether I see it in theaters, I would like to, but maybe it'll be on Netflix, and whether that's October, November, so be it. Again, I'm not like counting the days to this one, so it's just really when it comes out, and the cast is exciting, but I'm not gonna get myself too amped up just in case I'm a little disappointed.
Well, I am very amped up, so I'm
God
excited,
damn you, Zach.
excited for late fall 2022, so we can get back with Benoit Blanc. But what I'm not excited about, as we are nearing the end of news here, is the seemingly impossible release date of Mission Impossible, because number 7 was supposed to come out this year, September 30th, and has now been pushed back almost a full year to July 14th, 2023, while Mission Impossible 8 was supposed to come out July 7th, 2023, will now shift to June 28th, 2024. So they are really just hurting us as we wait for the next Ethan Hunt mission. Johnny, they said this was COVID related. And I guess that's just because of like the globe trotting involved. And it seems like they've been filming number 7 for quite some time. So I figured that one would be good to go at least, but that is not the case. They're moving them both a year. What are the reactions here?
Yeah, I mean, disappointment, absolutely. It's been delay after delay with these films. You can understand it. I mean, it's understandable, it makes sense. Can't blame anyone. It's supposedly COVID related. I don't really know if we'll see other big delays like this. I'm not counting on it. I'm actually pretty shocked that this happened, because of course we know that they finished filming 7 a good while ago, like even before the holidays, and that movie is in the can. So I feel like that would be ready by September 30th, and that it would do pretty damn well at the box office if it did come out. And now it's not coming out until next summer. So, and there's really, I would say at this point, all things considered, there's no real guarantee that the COVID is going to be a thing of the past by next summer. As sick as that might make some people to hear, but I'm just a little surprised. And I just hope that these don't move again. I hope that this is the last time, because I love this franchise. I loved Fallout. I thought it was a masterpiece, and that's going to be, what did that come out, 2018? So now that's going to be 5 years
So
removed,
long ago.
5 years removed from that movie by the time 7 comes out, and 6 years removed by the time 8 comes out. But at least it'll be nice. I mean, it's been this way all along, but it's just nice knowing that once the first one comes out, the next one will only be a year away. So I guess that'd be the bright spot.
Whenever that is.
Right.
Oh man, devastating. I remember back when we were supposed to have Top Gun kicking off the summer last summer and Mission Impossible closing it out, but devastating indeed. Last piece of news here. I will turn this over to you as the Alex Garland stan of the group, but Kirsten Dunst is expected to star in the action epic Civil War at A24. We've got Wagner Moura, Stephen McKinley Henderson, and Kaylee Spaney. I only know Stephen McKinley Henderson of those 3 names, but they're also starring alongside her. And it's a film written and directed by Garland, who, of course, did Ex Machina, who did Annihilation, and who is doing the upcoming film what's it called?
Men.
Him. I knew it was some masculine thing, but this is coming after that. So action epic. It seems like we're shifting a little bit away from some of his sci-fi roots.
Yeah. So, well, I wouldn't even say that, because it's supposed to be set in the near future. And so I would say by all accounts that there could be some sci-fi elements there, but it's not really specified. Wagner Moura, he's most famous for playing Pablo Escobar on Narcos on Netflix. his film work is a little bit more niche and not quite as well known, but he's also set to be in The Gray Man from the Russo brothers, which is supposed to come out this year for Netflix. But yeah, with Stephen McKinley Henderson, of course, UNCSA alum, shout out, go Pickles. But he was, of course, Thufir Hawat in Dune most recently, and then he was also in Alex Garland's Devs TV series for Hulu. And for her, she's kind of having a bit of a resurgence, which is very cool to see. And I'm excited to see another kind of, Alex Garland. He had Alicia Vikander as kind of the star of Ex Machina, and then he had, the women kind of as the focus of Annihilation, and Natalie Portman was the lead in that, and now we have Jessie Buckley as the lead in Men, and now we have Kirsten Dunst here. So he kind of is riding along that same, female focused narrative, and I'm curious to see what that kind of angle is going to be with regards to this story. And what it says action epic, and we haven't really seen Alex Garland do action necessarily before. So I'm very curious to see how that's going to work. It's going to be original, written by him and directed by him. So I'll be there day one, and I'll probably be there more than just day one, because I saw Annihilation like 5 times in theaters. I was obsessed with that movie. I'm a huge fan of Ex Machina as well. Still need to check out Devs, and I would like to check that out, later this year before Men comes out. But I am very excited for Men as well, which is also another A24 joint. So we'll just have to wait for this one. But one thing at a time. First comes Men, and we should get a trailer for that. I would imagine that's another one that could be like a film festival release potentially. So next few months, maybe we'll get some more news or images and some footage for that.
We will have to wait and see. Shall we not wait and see, though? Let's get down to business with Peacemaker episodes 1 through 4. This is, of course, the sequel series to James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. It is written and directed by Gunn as well. Some of the episodes are directed by him. Some are directed by others, I believe. But this is, we got the first 3 episodes last week on January 18th. They came out. We touched on that a little bit, wondering why the 3 episodes versus, with such an established property, cast, directors. But it was good to have a little binge to get things started, to wet the palate. And then we got a 4th episode this week, and are now getting weekly episodes. And it is quite a bit of fun. Johnny, I know I had kind of set the table for us last week, and you kept caught up this week. But before you dive in, and just initial thoughts, overview on what we're working with here.
Yeah. So as far as this show goes, it's really just a spin-off and follow-up to what we saw in the Suicide Squad, focused on Peacemaker. I believe his name is Christopher Johnson is his full name. Correct me if I'm wrong. But it's just following up with John Cena's character from Peacemaker, who miraculously survived and is now going along on this mission that he's been roped into with some of Amanda Waller's agents that she has sent to keep up with him and get him to do this work, this dirty work, to, I guess, earn his freedom, similarly to the Suicide Squad. So it is doing very well right now. It's actually the highest rated DCEU project ever on Rotten Tomatoes with critics, 94% critic score. And it's actually doing very, very well with, watchers right now at 85% audience score. So very impressive there. And after watching the show, I can see why. It's very fun. It's very kind of light. There's, of course, a lot of kind of, it's hard R if we were talking about like a rating. There's lots of swearing and nudity and sex and violence and gory violence and stuff. But I would say the tone of this is even lighter, maybe in some ways, than parts of the Suicide Squad. But then it still manages to keep, and I think what we're seeing, especially in the most recent episode in particular, there is some more emotional undercurrents with this character now that we're starting to take the layers off of him. Like an onion.
To compare this to, the Marvel shows that are so richly about grief and trauma and heartbreak, but no, said in joke there, but there is a lot more to Peacemaker than you would think. Obviously there has to be if you're making a whole show about him. But I've been very impressed with, kind of the way that they've taken this asshole of a character from the movie and given him this backstory with his dad and his family and his hometown, and just seeing John Cena kind of embrace this post Suicide Squad realization of like, you know, he killed Rick Flag. That scene keeps coming up and haunting him, and being called a joke by Flag as he's dying, that he's not actually trying to maintain peace.
Yeah.
But it's very cool to kind of see something that is, like you said, so vulgar and gory and dumb, you know, in a good way, but also has sort of like some real emotional depth and stakes to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they've done a good job balancing that so far and serving that up on a platter. And John Cena is, of course, the highlight, the star of the show without a question. But we do get a great supporting cast, I think, that really helps keep the show, even level and kind of varies the tones a bit and the focus of what's going on just enough where it's not like, oh my God, Peacemaker, because there would be a danger of him kind of overwhelming the viewer with his personality. But you have Steve Agee, who returns from the Suicide Squad, as well as Jennifer Holland. They play agents that were working with and under Amanda Waller in that movie, and now we're back here. Danielle Brooks is in this as well. Robert Patrick, who everyone will know as the Terminator from T2 Judgment Day, and then Freddie Stroma as Vigilante. And I'm going to absolutely butcher pronouncing his name, so apologies in advance. But Chukwudi Iwuju is he plays like the leader of this team that kind of is brought in. And apparently James Gunn did like a fantastic, like he had a really great working relationship and was impressed by this guy. So he has already been cast as well in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So pretty cool there. But yeah, let's get into, unless you want to add something else, the kind of the episode by episode beats here and kind of what our general thoughts are on those.
Let's do it. The first episode, we've got a quick little tagline for each one that'll set the stage. But the first episode, after making a miraculous recovery, Peacemaker returns home only to discover that his freedom comes at a price. So, obviously at the end of the Suicide Squad, Peacemaker gets shot in the throat. We see in the post credits that he is still recovering in the hospital. And now we see him post recovery. He's at this hospital. He's getting just let go. He's free to go. And he thinks that he's on the run, trying to not go back to prison. And he finally makes a dash for it and gets home. And then he finds out that, okay, Waller still has eyes on me. We've got this crew that Johnny was just talking about. And I am now being basically once again recruited in as a weapon as an alternative to going back to prison. I have to kill these people. I have to do these missions for the government to kind of earn my freedom. So the first episode is very much like setting the stage, getting to reacquainted with this character, fleshing out the other characters, the agents that you mentioned, who were not previously, or who were kind of in the background in the movie. And then also introducing a few new characters like Danielle Brooks is Leota Adebayo, who is, I believe, the daughter of Amanda Waller. She's secretly kind of like keeping tabs on this crew, but she's also one of the most like genuine and wholesome characters on the show. But it was a really, really solid pilot episode. I know, like, I don't know if you were the same way, but like I watched the first one and immediately went into the second one. So it kind of, the first three all felt together like a pilot for me almost. But any points from the first episode that you want to address that really stuck out to you and kind of brought this show, as we're getting this show kicked off?
Yeah, so I think overall, because we watched, I watched like similarly to you, maybe, or a lot of the viewers who tuned in right away at the start of the series, and others. But that first episode I thought was, I don't want to say it was not weak by any means. I still thought it was really good. But I think that one of the four is probably the one that has to kind of,
it's like the most by the numbers are like what I expected from the show. It's kind of like setting up, okay, this is who this is. This is what John Cena as Peacemaker is doing. This is what these people that you have seen from the Suicide Squad. This is how they factor in. The humor is similar there. You know, the profanity, some of the violence. Nothing really surprised me with that one. It's pretty much what I expected and just did a solid job setting up kind of the expectation for the series. And then I think it's in 2, 3, and 4 where you get things fleshed out. You get some interesting wrinkles that maybe you weren't expecting, or at least I wasn't expecting. And then you get some more of the emotionality as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point. It's not really until the following episodes where you kind of realize the stakes or even kind of figure out what the mission is. Like we're told like, oh, we're killing butterflies, and it's kind of like a running gag that like they keep asking like, wait, what are butterflies? Nobody's telling Peacemaker what that is.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we're figuring that out as we go. We're figuring out the relationship between him and his father, which is obviously like a toxic relationship. And in the most recent one, in episode 4, you get flashbacks to his childhood, and there are allusions to the fact that he was like abused as a child, and like we're kind of figuring out what exactly that was, and that his father made him kill from a young age to turn him into this weapon, and that his father himself was actually like a super villain. So that's been fun. The introduction of Vigilante, we don't really see him in that first episode, but I think that's a highlight of the following episodes, to get him, you know, adjacent to the crew and then fully a part of the crew in episode 3. So I think he's been a great character that I've had a lot of fun getting to know. But in that second episode, you know, the first episode concludes with like Peacemaker finally, like he's been in prison for a while. He's been on this mission. He wants to have some fun. So he hooks up with this woman who turns out to actually be a butterfly, which again, very vague as to what that is, but she has like super strength, is like able to go toe to toe with him, and tries to kill him because Peacemaker leaves his classified files on the table or on the bed, and she just like realizes that he's hunting people like her. And so he ends up blowing her up and has to escape from a now apartment crawling with police to reunite with his crew, because this was all done after hours. This wasn't part of the plan. And so now the team is kind of figuring out how they're going to recover from this, what's next. And that's when, like Johnny said, that's when things like start to pick up and get a little bit more complicated and interesting.
Yeah. And that's a good reminder for that first episode, because it does conclude, it concludes with a kind of a big action sequence where there's this fighting between Peacemaker and this butterfly. And I thought that was pretty damn well done. It was pretty, the camera work kind of swinging all around this apartment, and it's going from the kitchen and the living room that's kind of open, and then into the bedroom, and he comes flying through the wall. And the way that they're using like different props, like there's a knife, and then there's like a lamp and some perfume and some other things. I thought that was pretty fun and interesting. And then of course it ends with he uses this new helmet that he just got from his dad, and his dad, who is, I had no idea how this character, like this actor, was going to factor in, but Robert Patrick plays his dad, and he is like a complete racist, sexist, like scumbag. And but he develops these weapons for him, and he gives him this helmet that has like a sound like shockwave, and the sonic boom, when he sets it off, it like protects him in like this little seal. But then everything outside of Peacemaker is just like obliterated, including this butterfly who was like turned into like through a meat grinder. And it was so shocking and like funny at the same time, because it was like so unexpected and like over the top, the violent and destructive. And I just was like, oh my God, like that just happened. And then the episode ends. So I thought that was kind of a nice little like segue into episode 2.
And to pick up in episode 2 with the crime scene, investigating it, and the woman picks up her literal blown apart face and is like, what is this, a slice of pizza? I thought that was I laughed out loud at that part.
Is focused completely at the same set, at the same scene of the crime. and is focused on Harcourt, which is Jennifer Holland's character, and then Daniel Brooks, Adebayo, working together to try and get Peacemaker out of there in one piece. And again, there's some great action in this little segment here. There's some like gunfire and whatnot, but like the real focus is the almost like the subtlety and like the finesse for Peacemaker to get out of this kind of, he's trying to get out undetected. And that was very fun, and there's some good humor to be had, especially when he gets into this apartment and he kind of takes these people hostage and is using them to get out unseen. And there's some funny jokes there. And then of course he is able to get out, believe it or not. And then the rest of the episode is kind of of course there's a lot of kind of mistrust, and there's frustration between Peacemaker, between this group of people who's trying to protect him and work with him. And they're just kind of working all that out kind of through the rest of this.
Yeah, it's a whole lot of fun. I love that scene and when he's trying to escape and he's in with the random people in the apartment and the banter between them and him hitting on the wife right in front of the guy. It's a good time. But I really think, as fun as that one is, I really think it's episode 3 where things really like escalate, I would say. Because this is where we get like our first intentional mission, if you will. The one in episode 2, the escape, is kind of inadvertent as he's trying to unfuck up his fuck up. But in episode 3, their first official mission is they're going to assassinate some suspected butterflies. And basically Peacemaker, the one who will kill men, women, and children to preserve peace at whatever cost necessary, he gets nervous in the service. There's no dove of peace on his sniper rifle, and he uses that as an excuse, but he is secretly showing some sort of conscience. He's questioning being told, kill these people without explanation, especially when there's 2 children involved. And like, he's basically like, if you tell me these are butterflies, if you tell me what a butterfly is and why to kill these people, like I will do it, no hesitation. But you are not telling me who it is and why. And so he chokes, and Vigilante shows up out of the bushes and takes the rifle and kills 3 of them, the wife and the 2 children, which this is like a US senator, I believe. And then like all hell breaks loose. The senator's bodyguard, which is Judo Master, another sort of superhero, who is a funny character in its own, but he takes down Economos. Harcourt and Peacemaker are trying to work with Vigilante to get inside, and that was really like, I think that was a very solid ending point for that first 3 episodes, because there's a ton of action that unfolds. It really sets the stage. This is only 8 episodes in this first season, which we know James Gunn said he wants to do a second season, so hopefully it'll continue on, because I'm really enjoying it. But that 3rd episode, it ends with like, we saw it in the trailer, but that torture scene with Vigilante and Peacemaker's like, I'm not giving you shit, because he's not the one being tortured. But it ends with like the unveiling of a butterfly. Still kind of a question of what they do and what the cause is or anything behind it. But we get to actually see a butterfly. It flies out of like an exploded head, and it's like this parasite almost that feeds on a person and can control them. And Peacemaker secretly puts it in a jar and takes it with him. But as someone who, I don't know if you like, for me, like I watched the first 3 and then had to wait until the 4th one. Did it kind of just like, did it feel like an ending point for that little like chapter, or did, watching them all consecutively and having that 4th one readily available, did it just like keep flowing for you?
No, I think that it does have like a bit of a finality, like almost like an
it's
end
almost
of
like the prologue. The prologue or the first act is being wrapped up.
Because there's this reveal with regards to the butterflies, like, oh my god, this thing is inside this person and then is coming out, and there's of course this Vigilante, I think the relationship between he and Peacemaker is most developed through this period and where they're together and Vigilante is getting tortured and they're fighting together. And I really like Stroma's performance as Vigilante. I think he's a lot of fun. I think he's an interesting character, and like their relationship and dynamic is interesting. Because he's like a fanboy for Peacemaker, but he on his own he is a badass and
A
capable
very capable super.
vigilante.
Yeah, I was
So
gonna say superhero, but he's more of in a gray area as far as
he's,
hero or
he's an
villain.
anti-hero, I would say, if you're gonna like classify him. So yeah, so I thought that worked well. And then of course you have like the team is kind of, they're like down and out in a way because they just got their asses kicked by Judo Master. But then in the next episode, Judo Master his presence continues to be a factor. And despite being apprehended, and like there's also this butterfly conspiracy that is going to be parsed out even further with a big reveal at the end of episode 4.
So moving into episode 4, after that, like you said, kind of reeling from, okay, it was a success. They killed their targets. They have Judo Master held hostage, but it wasn't fully successful because there were so many issues, so many things that went wrong.
Yeah.
Vigilante's a part of the squad now. Basically, Myrn is kind of not sold on Peacemaker and wants to get someone he knows can get the job done. And also Vigilante just knows too much at this point to let him free. And he's not exactly like tight-lipped. So I don't think you could just have him running around and not under supervision. But what we didn't mention earlier is that after that, that one night stand that ended in a literal seismic boom or sonic boom and the murder, or I guess it's not a murder if it was a butterfly attacking him, but the death of that woman, Peacemaker's car was left at the scene of the crime. And so Economos, who's like the tech guy in their group, he switched the fingerprints, switched the registration for the car to Peacemaker's father. And that resulted in Peacemaker's father being arrested for this crime and put in prison. And this is kind of like a running joke because it's like Myrn told Economos, like, okay, save Peacemaker, fix it, blah, 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 get it done, and didn't specify. And so Economos, most people would switch it to just some random person or do something that is not connected, but instead he just switches it to his father. And so they kind of are hiding this secret from Peacemaker that his father is in prison and it's Economos' fault. And that's what's going down here. And so Peacemaker finds out, he's upset, he goes to see his father, and it does not go as planned or at least as Peacemaker planned, because his father is still an absolute shithead to him. And this kind of leads Peacemaker on a reckoning with his past as he's having flashbacks to his childhood and trying to figure out like his relationship with his father, because he's kind of like blindly devoted to hoping for some sort of validation. And in the meantime, Adebayo, seemingly innocent, seemingly charming, persuades Vigilante to get himself arrested, to go into prison and to try and kill Peacemaker's father. And so he goes in and he's kicking ass and taking names with all the neo-Nazis, because Peacemaker's father is not just like in prison, he like runs the prison. Basically, he's got a crew of devoted followers who bow down to him, and it's honestly like quite terrifying.
Literally,
this neo-Nazi group in prison that all share his horrifying beliefs. But so Vigilante goes in, Adrian, and he sits down at the table with all these people and starts talking shit and calling them out for their beliefs, and just wrecks 3 or 4 of his cronies. And then before he can actually do anything with Peacemaker's dad, he gets separated. The guards get him, and then they end up being able to bail him out. So mission not accomplished in Vigilante's eyes, but mission accomplished by Myrn, who is like, wait, first Economos gets Peacemaker's dad in prison, then Adebayo tries to have him killed. Why don't you guys just leave this to me? And so they get Vigilante out. But the big reveal at the end of the episode is that while that seems to be a good move, that Myrn is being helpful, maybe it's not as helpful as we thought, because Myrn himself is a butterfly, which that was kind of like a big shocking reveal that closes out this 4th episode. I don't know what your takeaways were from that or anything else in the episode, Johnny, but I'm happy to hear them.
Yeah, so the vigilante, kind of him going out on his own, and this little subplot with him was a highlight of this episode for sure. That was one of the scene with him in the prison at that table was one of the funniest moments of the show so far, and he just has like, it's weird, he has like this swagger about him, like he is like competent and capable and like a confident guy like on his own, but it's like when he's in these situations with Peacemaker, who he like almost idolizes, he feels like he's knocked down a notch, or like he knocks himself down a notch, which is, I think there's a lot to be, kind of analyzed from that. But when it comes to, this reveal, honestly, I was not surprised. Like, this was something that I had kind of like predicted or kind of thought.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of, there's like a running bit where John Cena is like, Peacemaker's like, if you won't even tell me what a butterfly is, like, how do I know that you're not butterflies? And there's like this running like distrust between the whole group, and especially with Peacemaker. And then during that 3rd episode, when he gets kind of blown up by, he's trying to get down through this cocoon or whatever it is into the basement, and he gets blown up. I don't know if that's when it happened or if it was like already an established thing that he was a butterfly, but I kind of like, my radar started tingling at that point.
Yeah, it's just, it was kind of hard because you're kind of suspect of everyone, but because he is like the most obvious new guy, and like Adebayo's new as well, like we have not met her before this show, whereas we've met Economos and Harcourt before. We knew like nothing about him, whereas Adebayo, we at least knew she has a wife, she has these dogs, like she has like seemingly like a conscience, whereas this new
but we
guy,
also know that she has their Amanda Waller connection, so she's not all in the clear.
Oh yeah, she's definitely not on the clear, but I didn't suspect her to be a butterfly. If there's anything else going on with her, it's I think she's human. I think she's normal for all intents and purposes. But that remains to be seen. But with this, I was like, okay, yeah, I kind of saw that coming. Like that kind of makes sense. But yeah, overall, I liked, and there's the last note for this episode. Vigilante is being taken out of prison, like he's being released because the team has the authority, of course, like they're well above the pay grade of this little prison to get him out in this jail. And so he gets in the car with Harcourt, and he's like, he didn't do what he was sent to do. Like, or I know I say sent, he didn't do what he set out to do, which is kill and like disable Peacemaker's dad once and for all, so that he can like free Peacemaker of this pain and like this very toxic, abusive relationship. And instead, he's only pissed him off more and left him alive and capable of telling, at least, trying to tell the police what is actually going on, and that he is not, responsible, and Peacemaker is out there and needs to be taken in. So, and he gets in the car, and he's like, I think I've just made things worse. And he's like very sad, looks like he's about to cry. And Harcourt, even, who is a pretty cold, kind of steely figure for most of the show, she even looks like kind of upset and like feels sympathy for him, or is empathetic toward him. And there's like that moment, I'm like, oh, my heart is just like broken for this guy, because he's like really trying to help and like do the right thing, but that does seem like he kind of made it worse. And then Peacemaker is also in his apartment, he's like in his trailer, and he's like having these flashbacks to his dad, where he forced him to kill these men as like a child. And it's, again, just horrible, like just so like traumatizing, and explains so much. And you really start to feel like, I'm amazed at how, like, I know that this was like the angle the show was trying to take, but I'm amazed at how he is such an asshole and like a toxic human being in the Suicide Squad, and in some, significant portions of this show as well. But you really, like, you feel so sympathetic, like, toward him, or at least I do. And you understand, like, he didn't choose to be this way. Like, he was made this way by his father, who is a genuine like knocked out by everything, and he's just thinking. And of course, there's also these allusions to the fact that his brother is dead and that he and his father may be responsible, and that's something that is maybe in play here. So yeah, it's just a very sad like note to go out on, and I think it's very cool to see how they're peeling those layers back, and we are getting deeper into it at this point in the show. And I'm impressed. I think that if that's the MO and that's like kind of the thesis statement of the show, I think they're already succeeding. James Gunn's doing a really good job with that development, and I'm enjoying the show. I think it's funny. I think the action's well done. I'm liking all the characters, even the supporting ones. And Peacemaker, I think, is developing well, and I'm looking forward to seeing where this kind of goes from here. I think we're like halfway, I think, at this point. So there's a lot still to come.
Definitely. I'm excited. I find myself like, I know we talk about January being like a dull month at the theater, and that's true right now. Like Scream was good, but we're kind of like in between a lot of stuff and just kind of in this waiting game. And I really found myself looking forward to Euphoria and Peacemaker a lot on a weekly basis. Like I know we're only 2 weeks into both, but like the two of those shows have kind of been like the highlight of my media year so far, and there's a lot riding on them, and they're both like very much delivering so far. So I'm impressed with this ability to kind of 4 episodes in to set the bar so high and be something that I am like actively looking forward to throughout the week. So very impressed with Peacemaker so far. I'm excited for the second half of the season to see how everything unfolds, and to hopefully continue with a season 2 and beyond, and keep John Cena in this role, because he's really thriving in it. It's a good time. And I've enjoyed seeing the expansion on the character and the DC world, and these we have to mention, speaking of the DC world, the self-awareness, like, it's no surprise with like James Gunn and being like humorous and referential, but Peacemaker has a rant in the 4th episode talking about Batman and his coterie of supervillains. And it is hysterical the way, like, we obviously, like, it's kind of separate from, who knows what the hell is going on with the DC universe as far as like what Batman he's talking to or what villains it could be. But like just in general, he's talking about like, why I don't have a coterie of supervillains, because they're all 6 feet under. And basically just like talking shit to this neighbor who's been a fun role just to kind of like start drama over there across the fence while he's minding his hedges. But we didn't talk about that. We also didn't talk briefly about the intro sequence, which is so random, so funny. This like dance number with everyone who, it doesn't make any sense because, like Judo Master is on Peacemaker's shoulder. It's like, it's not like, okay, well, these people are dancing because they're like friends, but it's like everyone in the cast is like dancing. Even that guy who, the old man neighbor, is like in this sequence. And I have yet to click the skip intro button on Netflix or on HBO Max, so it's doing its job. But
yeah, exactly.
Overall, really, really impressed with Peacemaker, and I'm excited for more.
Yeah, I'm glad. I was going to bring up the title sequence as well before we closed out. It's a great point there. It is very funny, very inventive, and just a fun James Gunn style way of kind of starting this up. And I like that, and I definitely, it's doing it's classic HBO fashion. I am not skipping it. So that's the barometer for success, and they've passed it
in a very different way than a Succession or a Game of Thrones.
Yes.
It is an iconic intro title.
Definitely.
But there you have it. Another episode in the books, talking Peacemaker. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening week in and week out. We really appreciate it. And we couldn't do it without your support. So again, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for listening and staying tuned. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram if you haven't already. Of course, like us on Facebook and subscribe on YouTube. We got all sorts of good stuff there if you haven't checked out already, interviews, other video content, and we post all of the podcast episodes there in YouTube video format. And you can find the social media accounts at Inside Film Room.
And while you are at it, be sure to subscribe to the Rewind newsletter so you can get everything sent straight to your inbox. And be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, Google, Amazon, iHeartRadio, anywhere you can find a podcast. We are there. And be sure to come back next week for another episode. We will see you then. Bye.